When I was growing up, the doctors that I saw used one metric for determining what they felt would be a good body weight for me. And I had one really kind of control freak doctor be very much about, like, she wanted me to weigh what she wanted me to weigh, even if it didn't correspond with good health. And that metric was called body mass index, BMI. I have at no point in my life, at least thus far, I've been an unhealthy low BMI. I've been in the healthy to overweight range for the BMI. And healthy is 18.5 to, I think it's 24.9. And I'm Tanis Coralee Leonhardi, she, her, hers of Seattle. I'm Tanis Leonhardi, she, her, hers of Seattle. And I'm filming this Tuesday, 30 April, 2024. And so, but have been, and when I was, I had one grandparent who had really good, blood pressure, sometimes kind of on the low side. And then I had some family members with high blood pressure. So, and I learned kind of about blood pressure that while there's somebody in the family with low blood pressure, that doesn't mean I get low blood pressure. It's not like the tooth fairy comes along and goes, you get low blood pressure. It's something that, while hereditary, sometimes it actually has to be kind of worked for to have good, healthy blood pressure. And so kind of early on, in addition to getting a little bit of pressure about trying to be having a healthy weight, because when I was younger, I was a little chubbier, and so there was weight was a problem, my calcium intake was a problem, which turns out I was lactose intolerant, so that one kind of was like, that makes sense. And then there was blood pressure was a concern because of my family history, along with skin cancer, and I later got skin cancer. So now I'm on the last two, right? So, body weight and blood pressure. And so I was going into the dentist and stuff, and really and when I went into the doctors, it was, how was blood pressure sold to me? And then I lived in a sorority, and it was kind of like everybody had their own theory for how blood pressure, and especially low blood pressure, worked, because it's like the least understood medically. So kind of everybody had their own different, they have so-and-so in the family that's in the medical industry, and they say that's not right, that kind of thing. I was like, okay. But the doctors were kind of the focus for low blood pressure for me, when it was kind of like, try for it, especially after I started running in January 2006, which was time coincident with, that was me starting dieting and losing a big chunk of weight, so going from chubby to healthy. That came with running, and that came with my blood pressure improving. So for me, it was a diet and exercise and a healthy weight. Blood pressure was very much dependent on weight, and still maybe, based on some of the blood pressure readings I've gotten when I've gone into the dentist. And I made a playlist for my low blood pressure journey, because it's not like super low, but it is on the lower end. And to some people, having a 90 something on top for a blood pressure reading is like, that's really low for some people. So accepting the social definition of my readings is like, they're kind of low. So low being the operative term, right? And especially since it wasn't something I was born with, even if it was in the family tree, it's something that I have attained. So the doctor emphasized balance, not actually one thing to cut out from a diet, because that's extremely unhealthy, and exercise. And specifically, the term they used back then was cardio, which I term high intensity exercise, or have found that my blood pressure has gone down with high intensity exercise specifically. And so cardio was their term, high intensity is mine. And so I've found, so my blood pressure has improved, and I got my body weight down, and then I got to an 18.6, and I was 109 pounds. If you want to back calculate the height. And that was in high school. And essentially the doctor was overweight, and may have had higher blood pressure and was like, I want you to weigh more. And then this is why, so I've brought up BMI versus blood pressure before on this channel, and I think I slightly went to blood pressure as a good health indicator, because I'm like, I do everything the doctors tell me to, and my blood pressure is fine, and I've had a low BMI and been picked on by a doctor, right? So if I want to, like, which one's less abused in my experience with the medical industry, blood pressure. Not that that wouldn't be, right? Like if I go in and the doctor is jealous or doesn't know what to do with the reading because they're not familiar with it, right? They could say something that then disrupts me, right? It's just kind of the reality of the medical industry. So be they new or just unfamiliar with the territory. So then is there a way to balance it out? Because especially for a healthy weight, so if blood pressure is partially dependent on weight, there's emphasis there of, well, then a healthy weight to have for that lower or healthy blood pressure reading. So how about something paired? Right, so essentially can think of it as taking, good morning, I'll be down in a few minutes. My mom just got up. And so essentially thinking of like, that healthy BMI could be lower than 18 or 8. It could be like, okay, let's say it's 16.9, which is like super unhealthy by the current healthy weight system that I grew up with. Then take and be like, if the person has healthy blood pressure, their system is operating just fine, and that might correspond to other things. So like as an athlete, a runner, I might say, if I had a BMI of 16.9, healthy blood pressure, I hadn't gotten sick in 5 years, and I could run the fastest times I've ever run, I would be looking at that BMI, body mass index, and being like, isn't that about how weight is distributed on the body? That's what the metric has been abused by the medical industry, right? So they'll be like, you need to gain weight, and it's like, but my body, when I put on 15 pounds, I get sick every 6 months, right? So, and that's what happened to me when I went from 18.6 as a BMI to like, they pushed me all the way up to 23 or 24, so like borderline overweight, like getting towards the overweight end of healthy, and I started getting sick, and I was like, where's the restorative justice for that? Right? And so maybe not a BMI and a blood pressure paired metric for everybody, but maybe for me, right? And then if it works for me, or maybe it's already out there, right, kind of thing, is thinking past the overweight doctor or person who hates skinny people, who wants to make them be fat, right, and sick. Speaking from experience, I wasn't necessarily fat, but I was getting sick more often. So, right, and I was like, well, and then I lost a lot of the weight again. I went back down to like a BMI of like 19, because I was like, I feel that I have mild asthma. When I put on weight, it actually becomes like, when I'm running, there's a huge difference between a BMI of 19 and a BMI of 23, when 23 can feel constricting on my lungs. Right? I have a medical condition, asthma, mild asthma, where being a lower BMI actually feels much better and is much better for my breathing. Right? But the doctor didn't care about that. It was all about, she didn't want me to be skinny, and it was just kind of like, that's bullying and an abuse of authority, and where's the restorative justice? So, I mean, while BMI might be the lazy man's way, lazy woman's way, lazy person's way, perhaps the medical industry needs to grow up a bit, mature. And so I would actually support BMI and blood pressure as healthy weight indicator. Right, so you can think of it as if you're lacking or over. All right, so if you're overweight but you have a healthy blood pressure reading, it's like, it's great, doctor, that you want me to be skinny. Right, you can go the other way too. But my blood pressure is fine, and I've been sick in a decade. So when is the last time that was true for you? Right. So that kind of thing is looking past just, a doctor wants a certain numeric, but actually starting to think about the person, and the person should be healthy. And just because the doctor likes a certain set of numbers doesn't mean the person's healthy. All right. So person with the 16.9 BMI, or let's go, 28.8 BMI, both of those people can be equally as healthy as each other, with blood pressure readings taken into account. And just them. If they struggle below 18 or 28.8 with some just basic health stuff like fighting off infection, well then 28.8 with them with healthy to low blood pressure might be perfect, right? And they're like, I don't get sick, right? And maybe they do way better in the hammer throw. Yeah. And maybe that 16.9 person is, they got good blood pressure and they can run the fastest times they've ever run. They don't get faint. They have good performance. They haven't gotten sick in 5 years or a decade. And they can go out there and run sub 4-minute miles like nothing. And they put on 20 pounds and their times slow down to 4:30, So there's a little bit of just basic common sense. I think I'm reading Matthew McConaughey's book and he emphasizes common sense in addition to all that knowledge. And I'm like, yeah, let's try that on human bodies. For real though. Is common sense can be lacking in the medical industry. So I support a paired BMI and blood pressure. Yeah. Healthy weight indicator. So there we go. Happy talking.